Chapter 8, Communicating in Intimate Relationships. Coming up, the nature of intimate relationships, characteristics of romantic relationships, forming and communicating in romantic relationships, communicating in families, and improving communication in intimate relationships. Intimacy in relationships requires commitment. Commitment is the desire to stay in a relationship no matter what happens. Commitment can come in several forms. We have an emotional commitment to be there for them, to listen to their emotions. We have a social commitment to maybe attend events with them, family gatherings, work parties. We have a legal commitment. You might be on the same lease together, or you might have the same mortgage. And financial commitments, you are there for your partner if they are lacking with their finances. Interdependence in intimate relationships. So when something happens to one person, it affects everyone else in the relationship. So for instance, if somebody loses their job, it'll affect both people. If someone has a bunch of debt and their credit score is terrible, it'll affect both people. If one person receives a promotion or some type of accolade that's positive, it would also affect both people. These relationships have investment, and that is a commitment of resources and energies to a relationship. In intimate relationships, we'll go through dialectical tensions. You won't stay in it. You might go through it periodically. You might go through it maybe once every 5 years. It just depends on the people of the relationship. So these are some examples of dialectical tensions. Autonomy versus connection. So usually, especially when you first enter a relationship, you're used to doing things for yourself. You're used to being on your own. And then you have to have a connection. So that might mean improving your communication ability, making time for the other person. So basically, you're trying to balance yourself and this other person. Then we have openness versus closedness. So how open are you to a relationship? How open are you to sharing things with this person versus being closed off? And then we have predictability versus novelty. So sometimes, like usually further on in a relationship, sometimes things might become predictable. Maybe you do the same things over the weekend. You're interested in the same things, so it becomes predictable. Some people see that as boring. Other people see that as security. And then you have novelty when you try new things. So like when you first start dating somebody or getting to know them, everything is new and exciting. So if you're maybe suffering from this one in your relationship, maybe you can try new activities together, new experiences, and that'll bring some novelty to a relationship that has that predictability factor. Characteristics of romantic relationships. So we have monogamy, and that's where one romantic relationship at a time. So one person is with one person and no one else is involved from outside the relationship. And then we have infidelity, and that's where people step outside of their committed relationship and have romantic or sexual interactions with other people or another person. Romantic relationships should be voluntary, so you should have a choice to be in a relationship or not. However, sometimes in relationships, people don't have a choice of getting out of it, or their choice is being blocked, and that would be in these abusive, controlling relationships. We have some relationships that are based on love and romance, and other relationships are formed through financial stability or power. Relationships can be of the same sex or of the opposite sex. And in 2015, same sex couples were getting the right to marry in the US. So, as far as being exclusive for relationships, that just depends on the couple. Some people are into polygamy, and that's where there's multiple people together. So instead of being a couple, it'll be a throuple or more, and a throuple is 3 people. Polygamy could have more than just that. You've seen the show Sister Wives. There's some religions that believe in polygamy, some lifestyles that believe in polygamy also. And then there are expectations for voluntariness. So hopefully people are able to volunteer to be in a relationship or opt out of a relationship, and there aren't any controlling factors involved. There's expectations as far as love goes and as far as sexuality. Forming and communicating in romantic relationships. So we have Knapp's model of relationship. So we start with the initiating stage, and that's where people meet and get to start to interact with one another. And then we have the experimenting stage, and that's where people talk to one another, and then they start to realize like maybe they have things in common. And you get to learn more about the other person. Then we have the intensifying stage, and that's where people move from being just acquaintances to actually being close friends. For relationships, for long-term relationships, I think it's very important that you also have a friendship involved. And then you move on to the integrating stage, and that's where you start to integrate your lives together, and then you form a commitment and become partners. And then the bonding stage, which is the last stage, and that's where people make a public announcement. Some people will do it on Facebook, some people will just tell other people that they interact with, and then some people will make it Instagram official. When it comes to conflicts, people in relationships will vary how they handle these things. So we have validating relationships, and that's where people discuss disagreements openly and cooperatively. So the people are very mature in this type of situation. And then we have volatile couples, and they discuss disagreements openly, but they're competitive. They might be interrupting each other, they might be yelling. There are conflict avoiding couples, and they can either completely avoid having the discussions, or they might say little things but not get to the root of what the issue is. And then there's hostile couples, and they have frequent intense conflict. Sometimes that can become violent. Couples and privacy. So we have communication privacy and management theory, and that's where the couples decide what information they are going to let out versus the information that they're going to keep secret. So it's important to form those boundaries with the person you're in a relationship with. Happy partners are more able to share positive interactions and emotions with their other partner, and then unhappy partners are more likely to cause conflict and make the other person unhappy also, because we all have heard the saying that misery loves company. Instrumental communication is important in relationships. It's how we deal with the day-to-day tasks, like who's going to get the kid off the bus, or who's going to pick up the child, or who's going to get the groceries, who's going to give the baby a bath, things like that. We have Knapp's model of relationship dissolution, and that also has 5 stages. So we have the differentiating stage, and that's where people start to be annoyed by one another and then see like their differences as like a bigger deal than it was before. We have the second stage, which is the circumscribing stage, and that's the stage of relationship dissolution at which partners begin to decrease the amount of time they spend together and the amount of communication they have with one another. The stagnation stage is the third stage, and that's where partners are no longer growing together. We have the avoiding stage, and that's where people start to keep their distance emotionally and physically from one another. And then we have the terminating stage, and that's what it sounds like, the end of the relationship. It could be a divorce, it could be someone moving out, it could be just them just not talking anymore. Communicating in family. So what makes a family? I think it just depends on you and your views. But we have genetic ties that could make a family. We have legal obligations. Maybe you're legally responsible for somebody. And then we have role behaviors that we might take on. So some of the roles could be like a step parent, a grandparent could step in. You could be an older sibling that takes care of your younger siblings. It could even be like with friendships. You can become family also. So there are various types of families. We have family of origin, and that's the family we grew up in. The family of procreation, so that's the family we start when we get older. We have the nuclear family, and that's more of like a heterosexual male, female, and then a baby is like your immediate family. And then we have the blended family, so that could bring in step parents. So you'll have step brothers, step sisters, a lot more kids. And then we have single parent families, and those are currently on the rise. So we have roles when it comes to our families. So the roles serve as functions for how the family communicates in certain circumstances. So during a conflict, these are the type of roles that will emerge. So we have the blamer, is what it sounds like, somebody that just blames other people for the situation. We have the placater, and that's the person that tries to calm things down and make everyone feel better. There's a computer, the person that uses a lot of logic and they're not emotional. And then there's the distractor, and that's just the person that just says random things. And it usually makes the conflicts worse. We have family rituals, and those are repetitive activities that have special meanings for families. So that could involve holidays. It could involve religious gatherings. But basically, you're taking ideas maybe from that you grew up with, from your religion, from like national holidays, from the community or your culture, and you're using it now. So I'm not really big into Halloween, but my fiance's family loves holidays, especially since there's like a little baby boom in their family last year, mine included, our little baby. So like this weekend, we are going to have like a family competition as far as pumpkin carving. So it's like the individual families inside that family. So me and my fiance, and then like his brother and his wife and the kids, and then like his other brother and his fiance and their kid, and then like his sister. So there's like they have kids, like a lot of kids, and then the kids have a lot of kids. So basically we're all going to be competing overall, and it's supposed to be this big thing. So I'll be there to take pictures. That'll be my role. Families will have secrets or share secrets, so it could be something that you're going through that you only tell the people that you're close to, or it could be something bad, like maybe someone cheated on somebody, but then it's just kept a secret between a couple of people in the family, or it could be something really terrible, like abuse in the family. Improving communication in intimate relationships. So these are the following things that we can do to improve the relationships. We can share activities because that increases familiarity and that brings people together. Excitement, fun times, laughter, all of that. We have confirming messages, and you could say like I always tell my son, he's only 13 months, but I'll say like, no matter what you do, I'll always love you. I just want to keep saying that, so his entire life he'll know that. So that would be a form of a confirming message. And then there's disconfirming messages where you could imply a lack of respect, so you could call someone out of their name, or just be really annoyed by them, or like whenever they speak, you might roll your eyes. So that would be like a disconfirming message. It's important to handle conflict constructively. We want to be positive. We want to support one another. We want to listen, understand, work together. However, according to Gottman, there are 4 conflict behaviors that can be destructive. So we have criticism. It's where you're judging and passing judgment on someone else. We have contempt. So it's when you're being hostile and disrespectful. You could be yelling. You could be calling them out of their name. Defensiveness. So that could be like playing the victim if there's a situation, and then maybe somebody will switch it around to it being where they're only hurt instead of like both parties being hurt. And then there's withdrawal, which would be stonewalling, and that's where the person just doesn't want to talk anymore. They might, give the silent treatment and not want to talk in the relationship. It's important that we have realistic expectations. Not one person can meet all of your needs. So they're saying like even a spouse, it's not fair to place all of that emphasis on them. You might have a great spouse, a great parent as the partner of your child, but maybe they're not the best with like sharing all your hobbies. So that's what you have friends for, or other family members for. Maybe they don't like going to the movies or like the type of movies you like, but they're great in every other aspect. So it's important to just spread all of these emotional needs. Just don't have it all in one person. It's really heavy. And then remember that the important people in your life are important for different reasons, and that should be okay, and that should be enough. Manage dialectical tensions. So we have denial, where one part of a relationship is managed and the other part might be ignored. We have disorientation, where a relationship is ended, where there's still tension. Then we have alternation, and that's like going back and forth between the two sides of a tension. Then there is segmentation, and that's where you address one side of a tension in some ways, and then you'll address different tensions in other ways. And then we have balance, and that's where we're trying to find like a middle ground, balancing. Then we have integration, and that's where we deal with both sides of a tension at the same time. We have recalibration, and that's where like we reframe the tension and the contradiction between opposing needs, because we want them to disappear. So it's like, well, we have this tension, but we realize that we need to work on it together, and that it might actually complement one another instead of being something that could end everything. And then we have reaffirmation, and that's where people, they start to realize that it's okay sometimes to have tension, and that